All right. Good morning, everybody. My name is Bill Soroka. I'm the founder of NotaryCoach.com and the Sign and Thrive Notary Training Course and Community. One of the things I love most about doing what I do is being able to share this passion and desire to continue and constantly continue to grow and learn and improve. And today is no exception to that. I've been looking forward to this for a long time now. Public speaking is one of those skill sets that really shows up for us in a lot of different aspects of our business as a mobile notary and loan signing agent. You know, there's the obvious ways, obviously when you're leading a meetup, maybe you're training, maybe you're teaching, maybe you're networking, but there's a lot of the skill sets that are going to help us even in building communication and relationships with our ideal customers like closing agents, attorneys, escrow officers, and even our fellow notaries as we start to build our team. So without further ado, I'm real excited to introduce our host, our trainer, Mr. Dustin Hogan, founder of the Rockstar Academy. Dustin, you're on mute, but welcome so much. Thank you for being here today, and thank you for putting so much effort into creating these specialized trainings for our audience.
My pleasure. Really excited to be with you here today, Bill. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Thank you. So I'm just going to turn it over to you, Dustin. I know you have a great presentation. Oh, let me just kind of set the expectation for how the flow of today's call will go. Guys, Dustin is going to be delivering a packed presentation with all kinds of different training. And then at the end, we will open this up to Q&A, right, Dustin?
Yes, you got it.
So there's going to be about the time frame. Can you set that expectation for us?
Sure. So yeah, about an hour plus training and then, 15, 20, 25 minutes of Q&A. I'll stay on here as long as you guys need.
All right. Beautiful, guys. All right, Dustin, thanks a lot. Take it away.
Thank you. All right. Well, good morning, everybody. I'm very excited to be with you here today. Absolutely love this community, love everything that you guys are up to, and really looking forward to an action-packed day. So yeah, like Bill said, we're going to be, kind of diving into it. I'll give you a little bit of an introduction, just some backstory on kind of who I am, how I got into speaking in the first place, how I've used it to kind of move my business and my life forward. And then, yeah, we're just going to dive into it. Today is going to be a little bit like drinking from a fire hose at times. Typically, when I've delivered a similar presentation to this, it's been over about a 2-hour workshop. So I didn't want to leave anything out today. So it's just going to be, we're going to be going full tilt the entire time. Also, too, at the end, we'll have some time for Q&A. But like Bill said, if you do have questions kind of moving throughout, just shoot them in the chat, and then we'll certainly get stuff answered as we're moving along through. And then at the end, I wanted to make sure to provide everybody a downloadable resource guide. So this resource guide will cover a lot of the things that we're going to talk about here in today's session. But with that said, I mean, if there's anything that you still have questions about afterwards, if something doesn't make sense, my email is always open. Just reply to any one of the emails that you've received from me, and I'm more than happy to dive into things. Also, another thing I wanted to mention today, right? This is not a webinar where there's going to be some sort of an offer at the end. I chatted with Bill and I said, man, I just want to do like full value today. So don't worry, there's not going to be something coming at the end of this. It's just going to be full tilt, of value the entire time. So let me give you just a little bit of backstory about who I am. So there's me, Dustin Hogan from Vancouver, British Columbia. Absolutely love it here in BC. It is just, it's been a lot of fun for me to live here in this beautiful, beautiful city, this beautiful province of British Columbia here in Canada. Real estate prices are a little crazy, but other than that, it is all good. It's a very, very awesome place to live. In the middle there, you can see my beautiful wife and myself. The reason that I like to share that is she's just been an absolute rock as far as support goes over the years, especially as it relates to public speaking. So yeah, I've also had the opportunity over the years to be a TEDx speaking coach. So back in 2015 here in Vancouver, you can see me on the very right side of this photo in some very tight red pants to kind of match, the TED colors. But for me, it was a lot of fun getting the chance to be a coach, coaching a number of the speakers that year. And this TEDx actually was one of the largest TEDx's in the world. So to have an opportunity to be involved with that, coaching speakers, really getting an understanding of what it means to perform under pressure in those, 16 to 18 minutes that they had on stage. Also too, over the years, I think we all have experience that kind of leads us to where we're at. And for me, in my 20s, I was actually a professional DJ traveling, throughout Western Canada, performing for thousands of people. So there's a photo of me performing for about 1,500 people in Alberta, pretending to be a rock star and high-fiving and all kinds of crazy stuff like that. And the reason that I share that with all of you here today is because I was doing this prior to speaking. I was doing this prior to speaking being my business. And it really allowed me to get an understanding of being up on stage and connecting with an audience and really getting an understanding of that energy in the room. Because every single time we go up on stage, it could be 2 people, it could be 2,000 people. It's really our job as the speaker or the presenter to really get an understanding of what the audience is feeling and what the audience is doing. So for me, I was blessed to be able to get up on those stages, and it's really helped me kind of as I've moved forward here in my speaking career and speaking journey. So currently now, yes, I'm a speaker, trainer, and coach, and I kind of focus in a couple of different areas as far as the content that I deliver. First and foremost, I love having conversations like we're having today all about speaking and public speaking and really, using that to kind of move our lives forward. Also, too, I focused a lot on personal development, what I like to call practical personal development. Yes, inspiration and motivation, but more importantly, things like goal setting and meditation and morning routines. For me, that's what I really, really love focusing in on. And then also too, this year, I've started to be a trainer for other organizations. So not necessarily delivering my own content per se, but delivering content on behalf of other organizations. And for me, that's been a lot of fun. So, had the opportunity to do my own seminars as well, which is a ton of fun. And we'll dive a little bit deeper into, what the different types of speaking and the different types of environments you can speak in throughout the presentation. And then recently this year, started doing a lot of speaking to students. So this was a presentation I did a few months ago, 3 presentations throughout the day for about 500 students, anywhere from grades 4 all the way up to grade 12. So for me, that was a lot of fun. Showing this photo, and there's a specific reason that I'm showing this photo, because this was about 3 months ago. I presented to about 650 grade 5 to grade 8 here in BC. And this was at the end of a day of 4 presentations. So it was a very, very busy day. The first 3 presentations had about 15 to 20 students in it. And I had no idea that this last one had this many students in it. So when I walked into the school, it was a bit of shell shock. And it was the end of the day as well, 2 to about 3 p.m. So I really kind of had to bring the energy and bring the excitement. But man, let me tell you, the things that you learn when you get up in front of a crowd like that, I mean, it's just, your learning is turbocharged. So this year, over the last 12 months, I've delivered almost 225 paid presentations to almost 26,000 people. And I mean, it's been busy. Obviously, that's just a crazy number of presentations. And the reality is not all of them were 10 out of 10. Right? I think every time we get up in front of an audience, it's an opportunity to learn. It's an opportunity to expand. And really, I think that's what it comes down to. So, I mean, what are we talking about today? What is the Public Speaking Masterclass for mobile notaries and loan signing agents? You probably have an idea of what we're going to talk about here today, but I just wanted to break it down so you really get an understanding of what we're going through. So really, this masterclass, think of it as a systematized approach to developing public speaking and presentation skills. It's going to give you the confidence really to deliver any presentation like an absolute rock star. And this doesn't just need to, you don't need to be a professional speaker or even want to make speaking, a career. But anytime we're in front of, 1 person, 2 people, 20 people, I really like to think of it as representing our ideas, representing our offers. We're really presenting ourselves, and that's what today is all about. Using the power of public speaking to grow your business, really create credibility and truly make an impact. So some of the things that we're going to learn here today and some of the things we're going to talk about is, teaching you how to connect with audiences really of any size, and to be able to do that as instantly and quickly as you possibly can. Also, too, we're going to talk a lot about, overcoming some of the fears, because the reality is, right, they say that public speaking is certainly one of the top fears out there. And if that's true, or if it isn't, it doesn't really matter. I'm sure for all of us, we've felt fear presenting. Even for me, given the number of presentations I've done over the last few years, I still feel nerves before every session. Quite honestly, if I didn't have those nerves, I think something would be wrong. So not necessarily eliminating those nerves, but just using them as exhilaration. Also, too, how to really confidently deliver your message in a way that's authentic to you, not trying to be somebody else, learning from others, but really sticking to what's authentic to you. And also, too, this is going to be a lot of fun. I'm going to give you an easy system for really creating and preparing presentations of any length, from 5 minutes up to 3-day presentations. And this is kind of the format and the structure that I use constantly. And then also, too, for those of you that do want to use speaking to grow your business, I'm going to break down kind of some of the business cases and the different types of speaking that you can do to, add to your business and to really amplify things. So what are we talking about today? Let me just give you just a very general overview. So part 1 is all going to be about this powerful presentation blueprint. And that, like I said, that's going to be that structure that you'll be able to take, and you can kind of, fit that into any type of presentation that you want to do. Also, too, I'm going to talk about, what does it actually mean to be a memorable presenter? Somebody that people remember, somebody that people, are encouraged by and inspired by. Some of the techniques that I've used and I've learned over the years to really make that happen. Like I said, also, too, we'll talk about overcoming those fears, and I'll provide some direct strategies that isn't just kind of high level. I'll provide some strategies you can use right away, strategies that I use every single time that I'm giving a presentation. And then we'll finish it off with the business of speaking. And like I said, I'll talk about some of the areas that you could perhaps pursue. So part 1, let's dive right into it. The powerful presentation blueprint. So really this blueprint consists of 3 powerful pillars. And these 3 powerful pillars, they work for any length of presentation, from a 5-minute little share at a company meeting or a session, all the way up to, I've used this exact same structure when I've delivered my own 3-day workshops and 3-day seminars when I was the only person presenting. So it's something that you can use kind of universally through any type of presentation. Pillar number 1, this is the most critical. This is the foundation of the blueprint. It really comes down to the structure. And I absolutely love having a structure to my presentations, because this allows you to feel that confidence in knowing where exactly it is that you're taking that presentation. But then also, too, having that structure gives you that ability to kind of improvise and just go with the flow as well. So part number 1 of structure is all about something that I call the pre-opening. And what is this? This is really your opportunity to hook your audience, right? We've all been to presentations where, the person comes up on stage and, good afternoon, everybody, I'm happy to be here, right? We really want to do the complete opposite of that. We want to hook our audience as quickly as we possibly can. That could be by bringing our energy. That could be by telling a joke or a story. Quite often, if something has happened that day, you could always drive that into the presentation as well too. So just doing something to hook your audience as quickly as you can, because the reality is, right, as humans, we want to be entertained. We want to feel like we're connected. So it's our job, whenever we're doing any sort of a presentation, to hook that audience as quickly as we can, capturing that attention as soon as possible. Because the quicker that we can get the crowd on our side, the more we'll be able to actually connect with them and deliver our message, whatever that message might be. It could be us teaching something. It could be us offering, could be you offering your service, whatever it might be. The sooner that we can connect them in that pre-opening, the better. And in a second here, I'll break it down for you, kind of like a general guidelines of how long these all should be, but I'm just going to go through this structure here first. So part number 2, you then move into the opening. So the pre-opening is kind of like, the appetizer. The opening is like the first course. So You may have heard of this before, WIIFM, which stands for What's in It for Me. All of our audiences are always sitting there thinking, well, what am I going to get out of this, right? Our audiences seek value. That's just human nature. We want to exchange our time for something of value. So the sooner that we can actually bring that about and let our audience know earlier in the presentation, we're going to get that connection with them. Also, too, we want to earn the right to be on stage. And what I mean by that is sharing some of your background, sharing some of your credentials, so to speak. And this is really going to allow the audience to say, okay, you know, I'm going to listen to this person. I'm going to listen to what they have to say because it seems like they've got some credibility. Then something that I like to call the energy whisperer. Interesting little term that I kind of coined, but basically what this means is when we get up on stage, doing our best just to get a feeling and a vibe for what the audience, you know, it is all about and what's kind of going on. The quicker that we can get an understanding of how they're feeling, it doesn't need to be bang on. But the quicker we can do that, you know, the better that we're going to be able to kind of move forward and continue to connect with them. Now, part 3, this is the main course. This is the meat of our presentation. And quite honestly, this is typically the longest part of our presentation. But there's very specific ways that I actually like to deliver content. So really think of part 3, the content or the meat of your presentation. This is the teaching component. This is where you're talking about, you know, whatever principles it is or whatever ideas or philosophies or really whatever message it is that you're trying to impart to your audience. This is where you're going to do it in this middle part of your presentation. Also, too, if you have exercises or activities or little worksheets that you want to take people through, this is also the time when you would do it as well. And what I mean here by facilitating success. So especially if you're in a, like, let's say a smaller group workshop type setting, moving people forward throughout the presentation, engaging them in questions, supporting them along the process. That's really what facilitation is all about, is supporting your audience through the path that you're taking and whatever it is that you're teaching them. And then finally, this is definitely something to write down, because once I learned this approach to content, the what, the why, and the how, it was a game changer for me, absolute game changer. And what this is if you want to deliver an idea or a piece of content, going through these 3 steps. First, telling your audience, well, what is this concept? Describing it. Then telling them, well, why this concept is important. And then finally finishing it up with the how to actually implement it. And what this does is this allows the audience to grasp it at so many different levels. At the high level of, you know, what it is, why it should make sense or be important to us as the audience. And then the how is the actual tangible, you know, rubber meets the road type piece of that part. So for me, every presentation that I deliver, and you're going to see, so now pay special attention as we're kind of moving throughout today. There will be a lot of times when I'm taking you through the what, the why, and the how. And this really allows you to dig deep and to make it impact. And then finally, part 4 of structure is all about closing it out. But there's very specific ways that you actually want to close out your presentation. You always want to leave your audience empowered. Leaving that last final thing that you say, leaving on a high. Because the reality is, right, we want to have that feeling for our audience when they leave that presentation. And this, like I said, when we're talking about presentations, it doesn't just need to be in front of large groups. When you're presenting one-to-one, your services, your offer, whatever it might be, that's considered a presentation as well, too. Also, too, calling back to impactful moments within that presentation. Right? Reviewing whatever it is that you've talked about. This is a good way to kind of solidify your message as well. Because the reality is, right, your audience, they'll always only remember kind of what they felt, not necessarily what you said. So we want to leave them feeling good. We want them to leave them feeling like they've taken something away. And then the final piece is have a CTA, which stands for a call to action. And we'll dive deep into that here in a little second, or in a second. But so often I see people when they finish a presentation, they're not having that call to action in there. So making sure that we've got that call to action. So let me give you just a general overview of how this structure would play out in a 60-minute presentation. So this is a loose kind of guide, but you can take this with a grain of salt here. So part 1, pre-opening, I usually spend about 2 minutes on that. The opening section, I spend about 8 minutes. That gives you time to do an overview of your presentation, kind of earn the right, talk a little bit about your experience, that type of thing. Part 3, the content, I usually spend about 40 minutes on that in a 60-minute presentation. And then the closing, I spend about 10 minutes on that. And the closing is longer than the opening because, like I said, you want to wrap it up. You want to leave that last little piece, leave everybody on a high. And use this, like I said, take it with a grain of salt, but you can manipulate this depending on the length of presentation, you know, how short it is, how much time you have, how much impact you want to make as well. All right, let's move into pillar number 2 of the powerful presentation blueprint. So pillar number 2 is all about stories. Stories are the quickest way for you to connect with an audience. This could be one-to-one when you're having a conversation. This could be with a larger group as well, right? Stories add, you know, a sense of vulnerability and a sense of realness to what it is that you're doing, right? Rather than just being a talking head up on the stage, integrating stories. And you'll see kind of throughout today, I'll integrate some stories as well too. And that is going to allow you to connect deeper with whoever it is that you're presenting to or speaking to. Because the reality is, right, facts tell, but stories sell. Think of anything that you've, you know, purchased in the past, or, you know, anything where you've really made a major life decision. Typically, it's because of the stories that was, you know, articulated to us, because stories hit us right in the heart. Right? Facts, yeah, we can think about it logically, and that's certainly part of it, but stories really hit home. And here's a special technique for actually telling stories. So rather than, you know, saying to your audience, okay, I'm going to start telling you a story right now, start right in that story. Start directly in that story. Bring your audience into it. So for example, right, if I were to say, okay, everybody, I'm going to tell you a little story right now about a presentation that I did last week. Yeah, effective. But rather than if I were to say, last Wednesday, it was 2 p.m., you know, I just finished 3 presentations. I walk into a room and there's 400 screaming kids staring up at me. I look up at the screen, the projector is broken. It's about 90 degrees in this gymnasium, and I have no idea what I'm going to do. Right? It changes it completely. It brings you into it, and we can't help as humans just to start visualizing things. So this has been a fun technique that I've started using over the years, just starting right in that story. So pillar number 3, which I mentioned earlier, this is certainly a part of the structure, and this certainly comes into play in your closing, having a solid call to action. Your call to action is really what allows you to spread that message. And quite honestly, if we're not including a call to action in any of our presentations, this could be 1-to-1, this could be 1 to 1,000, we're actually doing our audience a disservice. Because having a call to action, this really allows you to own your power and your value. Because what you have to say is incredibly valuable, and your call to action is what's going to bring that value into the future for your audience. And the reality is we all need a gentle push sometimes. And sometimes our audience needs us just to kind of push them along a little bit. And the call to action is what's going to allow you to do that. But before we create any presentation, we must gain clarity around 3 different things. First and foremost, your why. And your why is really your reason for wanting to speak. This is your key motivation. You know, what is it that, you know, why is it that you want to speak? Is it because you want to, keep you on track with what you're doing for your business? Is it because you want to create more financial rewards? Is your why that you want to make more impact? Do you want to make more connections? Is it something more personal? Is your reason for wanting to speak and present because you want to focus in on your personal growth? The truth is, if we're not crystal clear on why we want to speak and why we want to give a presentation, when the going gets tough and when our nerves start to rise up to that next level, it's actually going to take us off track. But our why is going to keep us focused. Our why is going to keep us heading right down that path. So my why for speaking, it's kind of twofold. First, from a unselfish standpoint, is I really do want to make an impact in the world with my message and with my ideas and the things that I do want to share. But from a selfish standpoint, the reason why I want to speak is I love it. I love being able to connect with an audience. I love being able to, share my ideas and perform, so to speak. So those moments when things get tough and I'm into my 5th presentation of the day and the first 4 haven't gone well, I really am just reminding myself of why I got into this, and that's keeping me on track. So the second piece when it comes to clarity is your what. We have to determine, or you have to determine the message and the topic that you want to deliver, because without that sort of clarity, right, we're throwing darts at a dartboard completely blindfolded. Because the truth is, it's your message that matters most. And let me explain to you what I mean by that. This idea of speaking experts versus experts speaking. And what this means is speaking experts is somebody that's great at speaking. They've got all of the, the techniques down, but they don't necessarily have a message that makes an impact. Compare that to somebody who's an absolute expert in their field. Even if they're not a perfect speaker, that person who's an expert in their field and has their message dialed in, they're going to make a much bigger impact on the audience because the audience can feel that passion when it comes to their message. So for you, start thinking about what exactly it is that you want to speak on, what resonates with you the most. And this is actually going to allow you to move forward that much faster. This could be based on your passions, your experience, your skills, your awards, whatever it is that you have going on for you. And I always suggest just choosing one topic first. Maybe you do have interest in marketing or finance or business or entrepreneurship and health. But we really want to kind of just focus in on one area first and then start branching out from that point as you develop your skills, as you further yourself down the line. So hopefully this is sinking in. I know I'm moving at 1,000,000 miles a minute here for all of you, but like I said, I'm compressing a 2-hour session into 1 hour, and I wanted to make sure that I got everything in here. So maybe just type in the chat right now that just say I'm good to go, and I'll keep moving forward here at lightning speed for all of you. Because step number 3, the part of clarity, is all about your who. And that's awesome. Love it. This is all about the audience that you want to serve. Who do you want to speak to? And similar to choosing just one kind of message, choosing one audience for now. Yeah, we all want to inspire maybe many different types of people, but for now, getting crystal clear on who it is that you're serving, who it is that you're speaking to, is going to make an incredible impact. Not only just from a speaking perspective, but if we kind of, step out of the speaking hat here for a second, even from a business perspective. If we don't know who our target audience is and who we want to reach, trying to serve everybody, we're serving nobody. So that's something I think we all have to be reminded of at times. Figuring out where they hang out. Are they at networking events? Are they at meetup groups? Are they at conferences? Really getting clear where those people hang out and being able to speak to them, exactly where they're at. And the reality is, right, your core values may actually affect the choice of audience that we want to speak to. So let me give you a quick review of the presentation structure here. Like I said, it is almost so simple, but that's the beauty of it. So part 1 is all about that pre-opening. Part 2 is about that opening section. Part 3 is the content. This is really the meat of your presentation. But probably the most important part actually is the closing, because this is going to allow you to tie everything up. This is going to allow you to remind the audience of what it is that you've just gone through, and more importantly, adding in that call to action. All right, we are moving forward here. Part number 2 is all about becoming a memorable presenter. This comes down to owning your power as a speaker, because the more that you can own your authentic power and the more that you can own, the style that you have, the more you're actually going to be able to inspire your audience. And what I mean by owning your power is this. It's really confidence in yourself and confidence in your content. And this is sometimes easier said than done, and this comes with putting in effort, putting in the practice over the years. But the more that you get up there, the more that you actually open your mouth and allow yourself to share your message with the world, the more confidence you're actually going to continue to build. And this really allows you to own that power. You're owning your power is also too about your ability to stand behind what you think and who you are, and getting comfortable with the idea that not everybody is going to like what you have to say. And let me tell you, this was one of the hardest things for me to get used to and comfortable with when I first began speaking. Because the truth is, and write this one down, every time you present, every time you speak, 10% of people are going to love you, 10% of people are going to hate you, and 80% of those people are undecided. So it's your job to cater to that 10% that loves you and the 80% that is undecided, because no matter what we do, you're never going to turn that other 10%. But unfortunately, sometimes as humans, we're always trying to focus on those 10% that aren't in love with us. So this really comes down to owning your power, getting comfortable with that. And also to getting that deep understanding of why you're doing what you're doing. I'm constantly coming back to reminding myself of, well, why do I want to be up here? Why do I want to present? And reminding myself of that big why. So why is owning our power important? Well, it really comes down to three things. Your audience wants you to inspire them, and really the only way to do this is to own your power. Audiences, right, we are very intelligent when we're listening to people. And we can tell if, you know, they're not necessarily in connection with whatever it is that they're saying. And this is a work in progress, like everything, but our audience wants that. Your audience wants you to succeed. Your audience wants you to do a good job. And really this also too, it positions you as a leader. Owning that power, owning your style, owning whatever kind of flow that you want to take, this is going to give you massive credibility, because people, even if it's subconscious, they're going to look to you and say, hey, you know, if he or if she can own her power, it's going to give me the inspiration to do that as well too. And really the confidence created through owning your power, this allows you to influence your audience. I think of some of the best speakers and the presentations that I've been to, last year actually, where Bill and I met at Brendan Burchard's event. Man, this guy owns his power when he's up on stage, and it creates influence because it creates this level of connection and authenticity. He's not trying to be somebody he's not. He's not trying to pretend to be Tony Robbins or Les Brown or all of these other greats. He's being himself, and that allows him to create influence over the audience. But the big question is how to own your power. It really comes down to being your authentic self, you know, being comfortable with being a goof, if that's who you are, being comfortable with being serious, if that's who you are, really just allowing your authentic self to come out. Also too, being comfortable speaking your mind. This is sometimes easier said than done, because going back to that, you know, we want to get that 10% of people that doesn't like us onto our side, and sometimes speaking our mind isn't always the way to do that. But at a deeper level, it allows us to own that power that we're looking for. And this is a big thing too. Dress for success, but dress for you. And this is something I learned significantly early in my kind of speaking career is, you know, dressing for the room, dressing for the audience that you're speaking to, but not tailoring it in a sense that you're losing part of your identity. Because it really comes down to the way that we speak, the type of content that we're delivering, and how we present ourselves. That's going to allow you to kind of get into that mode. And it creates a sense of comfort, quite honestly, if we're dressing for ourselves. This is a big thing too. Experiment. Be willing to try new things. Every single time I go up on stage, I'm consciously telling myself, okay, today I want to try focusing in on body movement a little bit more. Today I want to focus a little bit on slowing down, or holding pauses, or being funny, or whatever it might be. Stacking up these little experiments is going to allow you to find more confidence and ultimately find more power. Power poses, and we're going to go much deeper into this in a little bit, but this has been a game changer for me. Getting ourselves into that state. And we don't need to be fired up and, you know, ready to walk across hot coals or anything like that, but just bringing about a sense of internal power. And I'm going to walk you through kind of the science behind that here in a second. And this has been a big thing for me. And I really encourage all of us, you know, I really encourage you to make this kind of, you know, part of your approach when it comes to speaking, when it comes to business, when it really comes to life, right? Feeling that fear and doing it anyway. Like I said, in the last 12 months, I've delivered 225 presentations to 27,000 people. Every single one of those presentations, I still felt some nerves. I still felt a little bit of fear. And if that wasn't there, something would be wrong. But I'm always having to say to myself, okay, that fear is there because growth is on the other side of that fear. So whatever you can do just to convince yourself, feel that fear, do it anyway, knowing that you're going to grow on the other side. And then going back to something that we've talked about a lot is getting crystal clear on your why. If we're not crystal clear on our why, we're not going to be able to develop that true power. So what I wanted to give you here is kind of 10 overarching keys of what I like to call, an inspirational presenter. Somewhat tied into what we just talked about there as it relates to owning our power, but really becoming an inspirational presenter in so many different ways. This was huge for me, and I encourage you to do this in all of your presentations. Could be one-on-one, could be 1 in 1,000. Be as conversational as you can possibly be. Think in your mind that you're having a conversation with the people and the audience that you're presenting to. This isn't going to come across as too casual or loosey-goosey. It's actually going to come across in such a way that it's going to allow your audience to open themselves up to you. And when they open themselves up to you, they're listening to you and they're connected to you that much more. So this is something that you kind of have to navigate internally, not just thinking that you're given, this talking head giving a presentation, but being as conversational as you can possibly be. Doing your best to engage with humor. I'm not saying you need to go up there and be the funniest person on the planet, but we all have a sense of humor to some degree. If you're kind of goofy, or if you're kind of self-deprecating, whatever it might be, just authentically, try and engage with humor. You don't have to have 10 laughs every minute, but just doing your best to kind of keep that process moving forward. Making fun of things that happen throughout the presentation. Stuff's not going to work. Projectors are going to stop working. People are going to fall asleep in your presentations. This is just the nature of it, going with it. Something we've been talking about throughout it, the most inspirational presenters I've seen, they're leading with authenticity. They're leading with vulnerability. Because the reality is when you're up in front of a group of people, they're looking to you as the leader. And if you can be vulnerable in sharing stories and being open about your journey, that's going to create connection and that's going to create impact. And as always, just being gracious, thanking your audience, thanking them for being here, thanking them for paying attention, investing their time in listening to you. Going back to what we talked about earlier, being that energy whisperer. And this is something that really just comes with time. The more you get up and present in front of people, the more that you will start to get a feeling for energy within the room and the vibe that people have. But there's a big kind of caveat to all of this. Because sometimes what happens, I'm sure you've experienced it if you've delivered any sort of a presentation before, you look out into the audience and you see some looks on people's faces that doesn't seem the most positive, let's say. And then our mind starts to spin around. Or even worse, you look out into the audience, you make a joke, and it just looks like Madame Tussauds Wax Museum is staring right back at you, right? Just this sea of blank stares. There's nothing worse than that. But quite often, people listen in ways that don't necessarily make it look like they're enjoying your presentation. So the more that you can just say, okay, this person doesn't look like they like my presentation, but the reality is they probably do. Some of the people that have had the worst looks on their face when I'm presenting have said some of the nicest things to me after the presentation. So this really comes down to reading the energy, but not over reading it. And owning your style, from if you're goofy, if you're serious, if you're fast, if you're slow, just getting comfortable with being you on stage. And having a pre-talk ritual. So for me, I'll talk a little bit about this here in a few minutes when we talk about, overcoming fear, but doing the same things, getting yourself into that mindset. If it's drinking a glass of water, if it's doing a quick meditation, if it's, doing a quick rehearsal, whatever it might be, just getting yourself into that mindset of a performer and of a high performer. And a quick way to become, inspirational is to connect by sharing your struggles. The reality is none of us have a perfect life. And by sharing the challenges that we've had, you're going to make that much more of an impact with whomever it is that you're delivering a presentation to. Stepping into your power, which we talked about a little bit earlier. But the last thing is probably the most important one, and it actually ties back into number one. Speak like you're speaking to only one person. This is not only going to bring your level of nerves down significantly, because you're not thinking in your mind, okay, there's 20 people here, there's 50 people here, there's 100 people here. If you act like you're just speaking to one person, you're actually going to connect with every single person in that room significantly better. And it's going to bring your level of nerves down just an incredible amount. Also, too, it's a lot of fun because you're not having to think about, okay, you know, who am I speaking to here? I'm just speaking to that one person. All right, part number 3, overcoming your fears. If anybody has a fear, big or small, of public speaking, throw it into the chat. Just say, yes, I do. I would write yes, I do here right now as well myself, because I think we all have experienced that at some point in our lives. And I really, you know, one of the things that I wanted to leave everybody here with today is, even if you have a fear, it could be the biggest fear that you have. Please don't allow that fear to be the thing that stops you from speaking in front of a crowd. Start small and work your way up from there. Because I think back to my first speech, which is, for those of you that are unfamiliar with the organization Toastmasters, this has been a game changer for me over the years. And we'll talk deeper about Toastmasters a little bit later. But for those of you that don't know what it is, Toastmasters is an organization worldwide allowing people of all backgrounds and, you know, paths and goals to practice their public speaking skills. So I joined Toastmasters about 8 years ago. Not because I wanted to be a speaker, not because I wanted to do seminars. What I'm doing right now, this was never in the plan. This was never in the cards. It just kind of naturally happened that way. But I joined Toastmasters about 8 years ago because I knew deep down that practicing public speaking was a skill that was going to benefit me throughout the rest of my life. But I also knew that public speaking was my greatest fear. So not only would I be practicing a skill that was worthy, I would be working to overcome my biggest fear. So I think back, it was 8 years ago. It was a Thursday night. It was winter here in Vancouver, which, if you've ever been to Vancouver, it rains for like 6 months straight throughout the winter. It's beautiful here in the summer, but it's all rain in the winter. So it's pouring rain that night. I show up to the venue. I think there was 15 people in the room. Keep in mind, your very first speech at Toastmasters is a 5-minute speech about yourself. So hopefully I wouldn't forget the content about my own life. But the fear that I had going into that speech, I couldn't eat for the entire week leading up to it. I think I maybe had about 14 hours of sleep over that entire week. And going into that presentation, I think I would have rather been, you know, arriving at my own funeral than giving a presentation that night, because that's how much fear that I had. And I remember getting up on stage and I looked into the audience, and it was a supportive community, but my heart was beating out of my chest. And that 5 minutes was the longest 5 minutes of my life, yet the shortest 5 minutes of my life. I don't remember what I said, what I did, or anything like that. And at that time, yeah, it felt like a massive win. But looking back, I mean, that's 8 years ago, a 5-minute speech. Now I'm able to do 3-day presentations or 3-day workshops where I'm the only person on stage. But it was a lot of working through that fear over these last 8 years to get me to this point. And there's still, trust me, there's still a long way to go. I'm not where I want to be, but I'm on the path to getting there. So when it comes to overcoming your fears, and maybe overcoming isn't the best word, but just transforming fears more so into exhilaration, there's some certain techniques and some strategies that I'd like to share with you here. And first, reminding ourselves that nerves are natural. Nerves are normal. If you're not nervous before giving a presentation, something's probably wrong, in the sense that it doesn't mean as much to you. I really think that the more fearful I am and the more nerves that I have, it's because the presentation or the audience or the message means something deeply to me. So just reminding yourself that nerves are normal, nerves are natural. So the 7 strategies that I have that I implement pretty much all of the time and kind of work through them. First is first. It almost seems too simple, but practice. If you're just going up there and trying to wing whatever presentation or whatever conversation it is that you're having, no wonder you're feeling nervous. Because yes, getting to the point where you can just kind of go with the flow is certainly a lot of fun, but getting to the point to be able to do that smoothly only comes through years of practice and putting in that effort. Typically before every type of presentation I do, if it's the first time that I've done it, I'll practice it kind of 3 to 5 times. And this includes even 1 to 2 hour workshops that I've done. I've ran through them, 3 to 5 times. And the thing that I love about practicing that allows you to remove those nerves is you get comfortable with the content, but then you also get comfortable knowing where you can kind of improvise. Having that practice and knowing that you've practiced allows you to go with the flow. Because the truth is, 10 out of 10, 100% of every presentation that I've done, there's always something, a little curveball that's thrown into that mix. And practicing allows me to just go with the flow. Also reduces those nerves because you feel that sense of confidence. Number 2, before giving any type of presentation, arriving early. And what I mean by this is, showing up at whatever place that you're presenting, whatever the venue might be, arriving there a little bit early so you can get comfortable with the surroundings, so you're not showing up 5 minutes before you're about to get on stage. Sometimes that happens, but typically for me, if I'm delivering my own workshop, I'm there usually at least an hour before to get set up. If there's a lot of setup to do, an hour and a half. If it's a presentation that I'm just walking into and kind of plugging in, half hour is kind of my limit. Because especially this year, doing those 225 presentations, let me tell you, probably 224 of them, something hit the fan and something needed to change at the very last minute. So arriving early kind of allows you to bring down those nerves, get comfortable with what's going on. This has been a big one for me, a game changer, is greet the attendees that are showing up. Standing at the door, shaking hands, kissing babies, whatever you got to do. This builds that bond, first off. This builds a bond with the audience. Also, too, it lowers that level of fear because now you also, as the presenter, have a bit of a connection with the audience. And certainly, if it's a bigger audience that you're giving a presentation to, you can't meet everybody, you can't greet everybody. But standing at the front door, moving around, this is going to bring your nerves down also because it's going to take your mind off of the presentation. So this has been a fun one for me, a lot of fun. Smile. Something that I do before I get up on stage is I'll go into the bathroom and I will just stare in the mirror and smile for like a minute or two, because this is going to loosen up your face, because our face tends to kind of tighten up when we feel those nerves. Also, too, it's going to get those kind of feel-good chemicals moving throughout your body, and it's just going to feel good. Also, too, you're going to remind yourself of what it feels like to smile when you get it back up on stage, and then perhaps you go into kind of serious mode. So this has been a fun one for me to kind of integrate into my pre-speaking ritual. Significantly lowers nerves. Power poses. So we briefly touched on that earlier. So this is exactly what it sounds like. So if you have not seen her TED Talk, Amy Cuddy, please write this down. Watch this after today's presentation. This is a mind-blowing TED Talk. And she talks about this idea that if we put ourselves into power positions, such as she has here with her arms stretched out wide, or into Superman or Superwoman position with your hands on your hips and kind of standing tall, what we're actually doing is you're training your body to move into a confidence place. You're training your mind to get into a confidence place. And what this does is this truly actually tricks your mind into increasing your level of confidence, which in turn lowers your level of nerves. So yeah, maybe you don't want to be doing this while you're standing at the door, standing in Superman or Superwoman position. Maybe not that. What I do suggest, go into the bathroom. This is typically what I'm doing when I'm doing that weird smiling at myself in the mirror for a couple of minutes. Doing this, just putting yourself into a couple of power positions, you're really going to amp up that confidence. Also, too, you're going to lower that level of nerves. So this has been an awesome, and she's a great speaker as well, too. Number 6, the 6th strategy for reducing nerves is similar to arriving early, but getting familiar with the stage and the surroundings. And quite often what I'll do is, when I arrive at a venue, I'll stand wherever it is that I'm going to be presenting, kind of get comfortable with that. Then I'll move around the room as well too. And then I'll also get the perspective from where the audience is sitting. And because an interesting thing happens, especially if you have a mic, if you're standing in different parts of the room, you're going to sound a little bit differently. And sometimes it can be a little bit of a shock depending on the acoustics within that room. So just moving around, getting comfortable with, if you're using a mic, if you've got PowerPoint, getting comfortable with that as well too. And then the final strategy, and this is the one that I love the most because you can do it without people even knowing you're doing it. So what this is, it's kind of almost like a mini meditation. So what I do is I'll breathe very slowly for 4 seconds in through my nose. I'll hold that for 4 seconds. And then I'll slowly breathe for 4 seconds out of my mouth. Hold that for 4 seconds. And then I'll just keep repeating this process over and over and over. And quite honestly, this is something, if I'm really nervous that day, that I'm doing actually as I'm walking up onto stage, because nobody needs to know that you're doing it. What it does, slows down those thoughts. Also too, slows down your heartbeat, getting you calm, getting you into that moment. Love, love, love this technique. All right, we're doing great. We're on time here, moving forward. Part number 4, let's dive into the business of speaking. So we're going to go deep here, and this is going to be, just giving you a general overview of kind of the speaking business, give you some ideas of how you could use speaking to grow your business. Perhaps maybe you do want to be a speaker, and maybe some of the different paths that you could take as well. But first, let's define this term professional speaker. And I have it in quotes because you may not be somebody who wants to be a professional speaker. You maybe just want to improve your speaking skills, which is great. So that's awesome that you're here today. But I wanted to kind of give an idea of, well, what does this term professional speaker even mean? For the longest time for me, I thought professional speaker was just a motivational speaker, right? It's like, you want to be a speaker? Okay, you're a motivational speaker. And actually, quite honestly, it got me thinking about that old Chris Farley sketch where he was a motivational speaker on Saturday Night Live, right? Matt Foley living in a van down by the river, trying to inspire these people. So for the longest time, this is what I thought speaking was and professional speaking. And funny enough, when I told my parents, hey, Mom and Dad, I'm getting into doing some speaking, some professional speaking. My mom, great sense of humor. Oh, so you're going to live in a van down by the river, are you? No, Mom, don't worry. I'm not going to be living in a van down by the river. But this is kind of, the general idea. But motivational speaking is certainly a part of it, but that's not what we're talking about. What we're really talking about here today is somebody who teaches, shares their message, information, knowledge, or expertise to a group of people in exchange for compensation. And you can see their compensation is bolded because depending on where you're at and how you see speaking and presenting, integrating into whatever it is that you're doing, compensation can mean many different things. Obviously, it can include money, getting paid directly for the presentations that you're doing. More importantly, it could also be publicity, right? You presenting and getting your name out there even more. Could be a trading of goods. I've known speakers who've, they've spoke at a workshop or a conference. They didn't get paid. Yeah, they got some publicity out of it, but they got like a free trip out of it, or, a gift certificate to somewhere. So just shifting our mindset around what it actually means to be compensated for things. Also too, I've done speaking gigs before where I haven't paid or charged anything. Yet the event that I've spoken at, that person has then provided their service to me. Could be from a legal perspective. I've gotten legal services in exchange for my speaking. Whatever it might be, there could be an exchange. But the biggest reason that I think, getting into speaking can benefit you for wherever you're at right now is just increasing opportunities and connections. Increasing your opportunities that you can find and the connections that you make. There have been many events that I've been at where, the person speaking on stage, I've gone up to them after, had a quick conversation with them, and then we've created some sort of a connection. And based on that connection, now we're doing work together, or we've partnered on something. So you never know what's going to happen whenever you present in front of a group. I did a presentation 4 months ago to a group of mortgage brokers. And in my mind, I went into this group of mortgage brokers thinking that, hey, maybe, you know, they would want to hire me as their speaking coach. Maybe I could go speak to their community of brokers. But from that presentation, speaking to mortgage brokers, I actually got a gig at a high school speaking to a group of grade 10 students all about grit and perseverance. Never in a million years I would have guessed that happened. But every time you get out there, just allowing the universe to do its thing and put you in front of potential opportunities, potential connections. So what I wanted to do is I wanted to just give you a kind of a high-level overview of these 6 types of professional speakers. So first speaker that kind of comes to mind is a keynote speaker. So if we think of a keynote speaker, you know, the job of a keynote speaker is to inspire, to kind of engage, to entertain the audience. If you think about it, if you've ever been to an event or a dinner, quite often the keynote speaker kind of like opens the event, or if there's a dinner event, sometimes you'll have a keynote speaker that will speak during the dinner. Hence the reason why they kind of have to be a little bit entertaining as well, right? They're not necessarily going very deep on the topic. They're more so focused on the theme. So let's say if it's a leadership event, or, you know, a marketing or a management, they'll kind of focus in on that theme. But they won't necessarily go super deep because they're not trying to teach. They're more so trying to educate, entertain. Oftentimes you'll have a lot of stories with keynote presenters because they're there to kind of entertain the audience a little bit. The second type of professional speaker, similar to a keynote speaker, but some significant differences, is a conference speaker. So the conference speaker, the job of a conference speaker is to educate, to kind of like motivate the audience, also to inform. Slightly deeper than a keynoter because they're going to provide more information to actually like takeaways. And if you think about it like this, think if you've ever been to a conference that has like multiple experts on stage. If you've ever been to like a marketing conference, right? You've got one person speaking about maybe online marketing, somebody that's speaking about building a personal brand, somebody that's speaking about, you know, kind of direct marketing. So you've got all of these different quote unquote experts that are going deeper within their topic, but it kind of fits within this general theme. Conference speakers can sometimes be entertaining, similar to a keynote, but you know, you certainly wouldn't see like a keynote speaker. I've seen people have like instruments up on stage and they're playing music. You don't necessarily see that all of the time with a conference speaker. So this, for you as a conference speaker, is a really good way to find gigs, especially if you're somebody who's having a hard, well, where do I speak? I want to speak, but I don't know where to find it. Conferences are always looking for speakers. And it doesn't need to be a conference with 1,000 people in the room. I've been to conferences where there's been 20 people in the room and they have 10 people speaking throughout the day. So there are opportunities out there. And in a few minutes, I'm going to give you some resources to actually find some opportunities. The third type of speaker, which is my favorite, seminar leader. And the reason that I love, you know, this idea of being a seminar leader, because it's part education, part teaching, but then it's also part motivation. Think of like a Tony Robbins, you know, arena style of an event. That's a seminar. He's teaching, but he's motivating, and he's going very, very, very deep on a topic. It's typically like one topic. You know, the recent 3-day event that I hosted a little while ago was all on speaking. So for 3 days, we dove really, really deep into a lot of the things that we're talking about today. So I love the idea of being a seminar leader because of the education piece, because of the motivation piece as well. And also too, you can typically create your own content, your own exercises, your own worksheets, your own experiences. Now, the fourth type of professional speaker is a workshop facilitator, similar to a seminar leader, but a little bit different because it's more so your job to educate and to actually support the people that are going through the exercises and the work that you're taking them through. So think of a workshop facilitator as like somebody that's delivering skill-based instruction. So teaching you how your computer skills, for example, teaching you how to change your oil. Those are skills that you would learn in a workshop type setting. Think of teachers. Teachers are workshop facilitators. They're there to support the students. If they're learning math or science or history or whatever it might be, they're teaching a bit and then they're supporting students as they move through the process. So workshop facilitator, a lot of fun as well too. Now, number 5, and this is an interesting one. because this is a great way for you to actually get a lot of stage time without needing to book the events yourself. Working for another organization as a trainer, as a corporate trainer. And as a matter of fact, these, the 200 plus presentations I've done this year is as a trainer for another organization. And it's been beautiful because I don't have to book the gigs. They just tell me when to be there and I show up and do my thing and then I leave. It's amazing. So as a trainer, you're educating, you're also teaching, but it's very much hands-on. So think of, like a sales trainer. They're teaching very specific hands-on techniques. Social media training, teaching very specific strategies. So training can be a lot of fun because it's education, it's teaching, and the cool thing is if you are training, at the end of that day, the people in that room, they're leaving with a skill. They're leaving with something new that they've just learned. And then the final type of professional speaker, which is really kind of, built up steam and momentum over the last few years, is this idea of an online thought leader or a YouTuber. It's really kind of a combination of everything that we've been talking about. You can educate, you can inspire, you can motivate, you can train. It's a lot of fun. Also, too, I would say, if you're somebody that's looking for more speaking opportunities and you're having a hard time finding gigs, just hit record on your iPhone or whatever device you have and start speaking to that camera. Yes, it's scary. Yes, it's nerve-wracking at times, but it's going to give you that opportunity to get more stage time into practice. The cool thing about, having your own kind of online platform, it's your platform for sharing your content. No one's in charge of whatever it is that you're sharing. But the big thing to keep in mind is you're not typically paid for those front-facing presentations. So that content that you're releasing typically is leading you down the path towards some sort of other business or monetization path. Okay, we're doing awesome. We got about another 5 minutes of content to go, and then we'll open it up for questions. So let me just give you a couple of the benefits. We've been talking about a lot of them, but specifically, use speaking to grow your current business. That whole idea of if you get up on stage, you never know who's going to be in that audience. You never know what opportunities are going to come from it. Also, too, maybe you're not running a business right now. You've still got your 9 to 5 going. Friends of mine who have no desire to run a business or be a speaker have used their skill set in speaking to advance themselves in their career. Because the reality is most people in the world are shying away from speaking because it is such a fear. But if you can improve those skills and showcase that at work in small little meetings, little presentations, it's going to move you forward that much faster. Also, too, gaining credibility. Just by saying that you've been on stage presenting to any number of people is going to level up your ability to have more credibility, because people know that if you're on stage and if people are listening, you've most likely got something important to say. So it's going to be a quick way to actually add credibility. Also, too, for me, this is a big one, and I'm sure for Bill, for you, it's probably the same, is just being able to share an impactful message with your community. And your community can be your customers, your community can be your friends, your community can be your family, your community can be exactly what we're doing here on a Saturday morning, just sharing an impactful message. And really the list goes on. I could keep you guys on here for another 3 hours, but Bill would probably kill me. But we could go through this stuff, throughout the entire day, because there's so many benefits. Now, this is a big one, and this is definitely a slide to take some notes on, or better yet, just snap a photo of it with your phone. So many times I get asked the question, well, I want to speak, I want to practice my presentation skills, but where can I find places to speak? And quite honestly, 5 minutes on Google, you're going to be overwhelmed with the number of speaking opportunities that you're going to find. So some places that I found significant success, meetup groups. There are hundreds of thousands of meetup groups that are out there with communities of people that are interested in whatever it is that you might want to speak on. But also, too, don't convince yourself into saying that the community of people that you need to speak to needs to be like your exact client. To give you an idea, just on Thursday, I delivered another online workshop just like this to a group of health and fitness entrepreneurs. I'm not in the health and fitness space. I try to stay healthy and fit, But that was a whole community of people that I was able to speak to and share my message with, because they had a need for sharing, or for somebody like me to share information on goal setting, which is what we talked about. So just allowing yourself to get creative and looking at some of the meetup groups that are out there, and just straight up direct messaging the people that are in charge of those groups. They're always looking for people to message. Sometimes I think we do ourselves a disservice and say, well, I don't know if they want me to message them. Just message them. The worst thing they're going to say is no. Conferences and conventions. If you just go to the old magic Google and type in marketing conference, business conference, public speaking, whatever topic it is that you want to speak on, there are conferences out there that are looking for speakers. And on all of those conference websites, there is 9 times out of 10 a tab that says speakers. Click on that and it will show you exactly how to kind of apply. Rotary clubs. Rotary clubs are another great example. I know the Rotary clubs here in Vancouver are constantly looking for people to come in and speak. Maybe that's not your target market, and that's okay, but it gives you the opportunity to get up on stage. It's all about stage time. The library. My local library here is hosting lecture series almost every week. And if you're to just reach out to your library and say, hey, I want to speak on this topic, financial literacy or marketing or whatever it might be, even if there's 3 people that show up, that's 3 more people that you've impacted, and that's 3 more people that you've actually given an opportunity to hear what you have to say. Online workshops. Some of you may be opposed to doing online workshops, but right here, right, it's a Saturday morning, I'm sitting here, at home having the opportunity to chat with all of you. So yeah, the ability to be able to connect with people online, as we know, is incredible. Networking events as well too. Similar to meetup groups, but networking events that focus in on certain people within the industry, certain designations. Chamber of Commerce. I know here in Vancouver, they're constantly looking for speakers to come in. And another good resource is actually reaching out directly to meeting planners, because meeting planners are always looking for speakers to fill slots at their meetings. And if you can get in, especially if you've got solidified content and you've got a message that's specific to a specific audience, just once again, jumping onto Google and looking for meeting planners. Typically meeting planners, develop all or produce all types of meetings. So just a quick Google search, you'll be able to find meeting planners. And this is another one. Definitely write this one down. Speakerhub.com. This website has listings after listings of events and conferences and groups and meetups that are looking for speakers all throughout North America. It shows you if there's a fee associated. It shows you if you're going to get paid for it, if there's travel included, the type of audience, the size of audience. This has been an incredible resource for me, simply just from a research standpoint. So these are the 3 suggestions I have, places to speak. Now, the last kind of piece that I wanted to talk about here, just to kind of wrap everything up. We talked about a lot here this morning. Like I said, it was kind of drinking from a fire hose at times. But at the end of the day, right, if you learned a few things, if you learned a lot today, what really matters is what's going to happen after we get off the call today. After you've kind of let everything sink in. And it really comes down to the action that we take. And this applies to every part of our life, every part of our business. Learning is fun, but taking action, that's really when the rubber meets the road. So I've only actually have a few calls to action for you today, because I wanted you to take these calls to action seriously. So first, join a Toastmasters club. This single-handedly has been the best personal and professional development choice I have made in my entire life. The amazing thing is Toastmasters is a fully member-driven organization. So the cost to join is insanely cheap. I think I pay $5 a meeting. There's no other personal and professional development you're going to get anywhere for that amount of money. They have been developing their program for, I think it's 92 or 93 years now. So they know what they're doing as far as it comes to developing speaking skills. Even if you have no desire to be a professional speaker, it is going to teach you those foundational things. Like, I wish I got some sort of a kickback from Toastmasters, because I sing their praises every time I have the opportunity, because not only has it allowed me to become a better speaker, it has allowed me to develop so much more confidence in who I am, in my ability to articulate my ideas. So even for you, if you do not want to get up on stage, just having one-to-one interactions with people, Toastmasters is going to allow you to articulate your ideas in an incredible amount of ways. And not to mention, it's a supportive community, because anybody that's going to dedicate an hour or two of their week to practicing a skill like public speaking is already, somebody that's focusing on their development. So that's my PSA for Toastmasters. Stage time. Stage time, stage time, stage time. Every time you have the chance to get up in front of people online, it doesn't matter if it's 1 or 100 people, take it. Because every time you get up on stage, you're going to practice those skills. You're going to sharpen that sword. You're going to get better at what it is that you're wanting to do, which is, in this case, communication. And then the final little reminder, because sometimes we want to, take the biggest bite that we can possibly make and change our lives overnight. But it really comes down to just slow, continuous improvement. To me, this is a skill worth developing for the rest of my life. So if I'm just focusing on 1 or 2 little things every time I present, it's going to allow me to move forward. And same for you. So just don't try and, become the best speaker overnight, but just take it slow by slow. Remember, my friends, this is a marathon, not a sprint. And then the final thing is just have fun. You're going to make mistakes when you get up there. There have been presentations this year in front of 400 kids when the screen has gone completely black and I have to do a song and a dance on the stage. Things are going to happen, but the more we can laugh, the more we can have fun, the more enjoyable it is going to be for us. So the last thing I'm going to give you here before the Q&A, I said there would be a downloadable resource guide. So this is the website to go to right here. Maybe Bill, if you could please type that into the chat, that would be awesome. So you guys can head to this, download that resource guide, Introduction to Public Speaking Success. Covers a lot of the things that we talked about here today, and then some. And like I said, if there are any questions beyond today, shoot me an email. Hopefully you can feel my passion for this subject. I'm more than happy to answer any questions that I possibly can. But thank you guys for being here this morning on a Saturday. Bill, thank you so much for having me. You've got an incredible community. So yeah, open it up for questions.
This sounds great. Are you going to stop the screen share?
Yep.
Oh, great. Wow, I've got 9 pages of notes. Anybody else take any notes on this presentation? I got 9 pages. That was really, really good stuff, Dustin, and I really appreciate it. And I think you really nailed it, not only on the content, but just in acknowledging the audience. I mean, here it is on a Saturday morning, and we had 80 people growing themselves and their business and their dreams on a Saturday morning. So I want to honor everybody who's on the call with us today before we get started. And guys, before we open it up to Q&A, I want to just throw this out to you. One thing that got really clear to me is that we are in an industry, we hold a position as a mobile notary and loan signing agent where 70 to 80% of adults over 18 in the United States don't even know that our services are an option to them. So can you imagine the power that we yield when we can speak to it? We can share the valuable service that we offer to groups and communities and real estate agents. Many real estate agents don't even know we exist and that our services can help them be a hero in their transaction. So I see a huge opportunity here, Dustin. So thank you so much. Let's open it up for questions. Anybody have any specific questions for Dustin? You can unmute and just ask away or type it into the chat, whatever you're feeling.
Hi, this is Marcia.
Hi, Marcia.
Hi, Dustin. Hi, Bill.
Hello.
I was calling, I wanted to ask, how do you know what to charge once you get to that point when you're charging?
And that is a question that the answer is it depends. It depends on a number of factors. So the first couple of things that I would focus in on to even get a general idea is the type of audience that you're speaking to, how long the presentation is, and how much of your presentation needs to be custom tailored. So to give you an idea, when I'm delivering presentations in schools, there's only so much that I can charge because schools only have a certain budget. I could literally do the same presentation to a corporate audience and charge 5 to 10 times more. So that's first and foremost, is getting an understanding of who the audience is and getting a general idea of what the budget is. Also, two, the length. So if it's an hour presentation or if it's a 2-hour workshop, well, you're going to have to put a lot more effort into developing a workshop than you would to a presentation. And it's going to be more than twice the amount. So that's the first piece, or the second piece. And then the third piece is how much you actually have to customize. So I've got certain presentations where I can kind of just plug and play and maybe change out some of the stories. But if I need to rewrite an entire presentation and it's only going to be used that one time, that doubles the cost right there. But first and foremost is getting an understanding of who the audience is that you're speaking to, trying to do a little bit of a research to see what others are charging in that industry. And actually that website that I gave you, speakerhub.com, I believe there's a forum on there where you could be able to ask those types of questions depending on the venue.
Great question. Great question. And I think too, we have to kind of be prepared for lots of doing it for free, right, Dustin?
Yes.
As we grow into that. And Dustin, is public speaking or being a speaker, is that still the highest paid, one of the highest paid jobs in the world right now?
I'd say it's definitely the lowest and highest paid job in the world right now.
Both roles, right?
Yeah, because like you said, I mean, I didn't charge for my first presentation until 5 years in.
Wow.
So it's like you're putting in that effort, just building up that credibility. And even still, like I'm still doing a lot of presentations for free because it's building up that credibility, right? It's compensation isn't just cash in hand, which we all know.
Exactly. Great question, Marcia. Marian asks, how do you market yourself for speaking engagements as a newcomer? Should you have a portfolio or an outline? How does that look?
So the first thing that you want to do, Marian, is get yourself a demo video. My demo video is what has landed me each and every one of my speaking gigs. And it's kind of a catch-22 because you can't get speaking gigs because you don't have a demo video, but you can't do a demo video because you don't have speaking gigs. This is another reason why I love Toastmasters, because every time that I was giving a presentation, I had somebody film it. And when someone is watching that video, they just see an audience. They don't know that it was a Toastmasters group. So I got footage across about a year, and then I just spliced that all together into this demo video. And then when I was actually looking for speaking gigs, first question they said, well, do you have a demo video? Yep, sure do. Here's my 5-minute demo video.
Awesome.
So that's another reason that Toastmasters is awesome. But yeah, getting that demo video in place is pretty key.
Great suggestion. Victoria Young Wilson, you have a question.
I do. So I've actually just been pretty much brought back into the speaking arena, more so from a presenter perspective. But today I have my first speaking engagement for a congressional candidate here in the city of Chicago.
Congrats.
Third district. Yeah, I'm very excited, but I'm so nervous. So I'll be speaking in front of hundreds of people.
Good for you.
So my question is that I've written this speech, I've been practicing my speech, but I don't feel like I want to go up there with a speech, a piece of paper. What do you think is a better suggestion? Should I go bullet points, or should I just like continue to practice my speech and kind of like flow?
So what time is it, the presentations today?
Yes, at 6 p.m.
Okay, so how many times have you practiced it so far?
About 5.
Okay, so if you put it into bullet form, is that something that you think you could work from?
I think it'll be better, yes.
So my suggestion would be, as soon as we get off this call, put it into bullet form, practice it in bullet form, but don't, like if there's going to be a podium up there, you could bring it with you maybe just for a comfort standpoint, but my suggestion would be do your best not to read off of it. And here's the reason. Even if you forget 5 full paragraphs of what you were going to say, nobody in the audience knows that.
Exactly.
And I think that's one of the problems for all of us as speakers. Well, if I forget something, nobody's going to know you forgot it, right? You're a great speaker already just in having a conversation with you. So just go with the flow. But yeah, I would recommend just putting it into bullet form and then just rolling with it from there.
Awesome. Thank you for the confirmation. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no
this is
worries.
awesome.
Good
This
luck.
is awesome, Bill. I'm so excited. Like,
Oh, that's amazing.
Oh, man, I'm so glad the timing worked out. That's awesome.
Yeah.
That is awesome.
Good question. Okay, so Janet says, question. Hold on. I think we had one right above that. Let me go to, oh yeah. Question, step 3, clarity, your who. Can you explain again, your core values may affect your choice?
Yeah, so, and this is a very, very deep kind of question and a deep focus. So let's say I have the opportunity to go speak to a group of mortgage brokers. And I know that generally speaking, mortgage brokers could be somebody who would resonate with my content. But this group of mortgage brokers, for example, their business practices are a little shadier. Their integrity isn't necessarily there compared to other groups that I've worked with. But in my mind, they're still partly my target audience, but their core value of not operating with integrity is out of alignment with my core value of operating with integrity. So even though they kind of fit within my target audience, I wouldn't go speak to them because their core values are misaligned. So that's what I mean by that. It really comes down to, we have to understand our core values and then have an understanding if, you know, that group that we're speaking to is in alignment with that. So that's what I mean by that piece.
Yeah, that's a huge consideration too. And that's why knowing what your values are and where you stand and what you stand behind is so important. I love that.
Yeah. Yeah.
One of those things you wouldn't even think about just on the surface level.
Yeah.
Sylvie says, when Dustin listed the types of speakers, I'm curious to see what kind this presentation is and then what type are Bill's YouTube videos.
For sure. So this would be considered kind of like an online workshop or an online seminar, not necessarily seminar-ish because I'm not taking you through exercises, but it's certainly more of a workshop because I'm teaching a skill, I'm educating, I'm kind of informing, hoping to motivate a little bit as well too. So this would be considered an online workshop. Mm-hmm. For your videos as well, Bill, I mean, some of them are certainly workshop-y because you're going deeper into kind of content and education. Some of them, I'd be curious to hear what you think are, more on the thought leader side of things as well too, because you're positioning yourself as an expert and somebody that has credibility in this space. So I think when I listed those types of speakers, it's not like you're just trying to check one of them off. Sometimes it's a little bit of a hybrid of both. For me, that just allows you to kind of distinguish in your mind the areas to focus in on if you're doing a workshop versus a seminar versus a keynote. So hopefully that helps out, Sylvie.
Yeah, definitely. Tani says, is there a line of how vulnerable to get? Great
question. This 100% depends on the audience that you're speaking to. So I'll go back to our mortgage broker example again. If I'm speaking to a group of mortgage brokers, I'm not necessarily going to share deep struggles that I've had in the past, maybe around, let's say, self-esteem issues or, you know, something that I've worked on as I'm kind of like bettering myself. But if I'm delivering a seminar on personal growth, I'm going to dive as deep as I possibly can into that because it's applicable to that audience. So the level of vulnerability depends on who it is that you're speaking to, right? If I'm speaking to students, I'm certainly going to share more of the struggles that I had maybe growing up if I was bullied or if, you know, what it's like to be at a new school. But with a group of professionals, maybe that's not necessarily applicable. So a lot of these questions can get answered by depending on who it is that you're speaking to. So much of it comes down to who it is you're speaking to.
Makes total sense. Did that work okay for you, Tani, or a follow-up question?
Can you hear me?
Sure can.
Okay. All right. Hi. So my question in regards to that is, so I do leadership. I'm sorry, I can hear myself and that's weird. Okay. So I help lead a recovery program. So I get very vulnerable there, right? Like you did deep and then you expose that. But with my employment, I'm going to be leading you need to get into volunteer, and why that's going to help with networking, why that's going to help with your mental health and for your children. So I need to share some sort of story with how it's helped me. But how deep do I get when I'm trying to influence and disrupt change without it looking bad because it is my employment?
Totally. So
Okay.
yeah, no, that's a great question. I mean, I think in that case, you can go pretty deep. I mean, it's you're just sharing honestly. And I think if you share what you've kind of gone through, and it's all about sharing where you were to where you are right now. And it's that gap in the middle that's kind of the transformation, so to speak. So if you can articulate where you were, what you've done to get where you are right now, then yeah, I'd say go as deep as you possibly can, because it's just going to allow you to make that much more of an impact of saying, well, you know, here's my result, here's the transformation, which is then going to inspire the people that you're speaking to want to do the same thing. So hopefully that makes sense.
It does. Thank you.
No problem.
Awesome. Jacqueline says, I'm hosting a family 70th celebration. I want to do a keynote. Any ideas on this?
Wow. Yeah. So if you use the old magic Google once again and do kind of like family celebration speech, you're going to find a lot of ideas online. I actually did that when I had to do my first best man speech. I just typed best man speech ideas, and the resources that are out there is incredible. So for a family situation, I think humor has got to be a big portion of this. Also too, the cool thing about family situations or celebrations, you can tell a lot of inside jokes that everybody there is going to understand. Whereas if you told it to us, you'd just be deadpan, right? So yeah, thinking back on some family history, some things that just relate to people within your family, and making it more casual and more fun. Like that's definitely a situation where I'm sure if it's a celebration, people may have a few drinks in their hand. It's hard to say. So yeah, just have fun with that one. But yeah, jump onto Google, Jacqueline, and I think you'll find some cool ideas.
Awesome suggestion. So Victoria says, is it good to open with a quote to engage your audience?
Definitely. If the quote applies to your speech, also too, though, something to be mindful of, you got to hit that quote 100%. This isn't something that you can improvise or, you know, only get part of it. So as long as you've got the confidence to hit it 100%, I'd say go for it. It is a fun way to kind of start, and I've done that. Ending with a quote is also a good way as well too, because then you've built up that comfort throughout the presentation, and then the quote can then tie in everything that you've spoken about. Good one though.
Great question, Victoria. Marion says, how do you decide when to use visual aids for your presentation? I hesitate at times because I don't want to put too much information on the PowerPoint. What is your suggestion for how much content to include in your visual aids and when to use your visual aid?
So this also goes back to the type of presentation that you're doing, situation, and the audience. So today, my slides were significantly more text heavy than I typically would do. And the reason is because all of us are sitting down staring at the screen, and that's all we're doing. If this was in a room where there's all these other distractions, typically my slides would have very minimal words, and then I would just speak to those. But today is kind of more classroom style, so that's why there was more content on it. So yeah, it depends on the type of presentation, depends on the setting that you're in. Also, once again, goes back to the audience. Also, it goes back to your level of comfort with the content. Quite often, I'm actually using slides to keep me on track with my presentation, because if I didn't have the slide, I would get lost in that. So sometimes if I'm doing a certain type of presentation for the first time, I'll have a little bit more slides than I would if I've done it the 10th time. But if I'm doing, let's say, like a keynote or like a conference type of presentation, typically I wouldn't be doing that with any sort of slides. It would be workshops, seminars, training type situations that I'm using slides, because you're interacting in between the slides. But yeah, there's no one answer to that. For the longest time, quite honestly, I avoided slides because I was scared of the technology piece. And going into presentations, the thing that I'm most nervous about still is the technology, not the speaking itself. Because technology is, you can't control that all of the time.
A lot of the times. So.
Yeah.
Yeah. Samara says, in creating content, I want to summarize what I learned this year at the NNA conference. How do I give credit during a presentation?
I think exactly what you just said there. I'm summarizing this content that I learned at such and such conference. If I'm crediting something in my presentation that I haven't created, I'll straight up just say that right away. Yeah, it doesn't need to be a long-winded thing, just a verbal acknowledgement. It's not like a book where you need to have footnotes or an appendix or something like that. Just verbally acknowledging it is really all you need to do. You can throw up a logo on the screen. That never hurts as well too. People like to get their logo out there. So yeah, just verbally acknowledge it is more than enough. Good question though.
Great question. Jason, I saw you try to unmute earlier. Do you have a question, Jason Bronstein?
Oh, no, that was a mistake. I'm sorry.
Oh, no problem. No problem. All right, guys. Any more? Time for one more question here. Anybody got one? Going once. Going twice. All right, we'll go ahead and call it here. Dustin, thank you again for an amazing workshop, seminar, webinar, whatever this was called today. This was amazing, great content. I love taking notes. That means I'm learning. So I really appreciate all the effort that you put into this. And guys, once again, those who are on the call with us on the Saturday morning, thank you for growing yourself and your business, and enjoy the rest of your weekend.
Thanks, everybody.
Hey, Dustin, real quick before we get off of here, if somebody wants to find you and learn more about what you do, where can they go?
Yeah, my website, therockstaracademy.com or dustinhogan.com, all takes you to the same direction. Or just, respond to any one of the emails that I've sent you, and happy to help.
All right. Thanks a lot, guys. Enjoy your weekend.
Thanks.
Thank you.